live something like a normal life.
You said last week that Scotland, you hoped, was turning a corner on Omicron. You promised that once Scotland came out of the COVID crisis, you would table the legislation for a referendum on independence. When are you going to do that?
The preparatory work of that is underway right now. We haven't decided on the date that we would seek to introduce the bill. We'll decide that in the coming weeks. But what I have said, and I will happily say again to you right now, that my intention is to take the steps that will facilitate a referendum happening before the end of 2023. That's the proposition that just short of a year ago I fought an election on and was re-elected as First Minister. My party was re-elected with a historically high share of the vote. This is about democracy. It's about allowing the people of Scotland to choose our own future. And for goodness sake, when we look at everything that has been happening over years now in Westminster, the chaos, the instability, the unpredictability, then I think there are a growing number of people in Scotland who think actually we could do much better as an independent country in charge of our own fate rather than having people like Boris Johnson.
People also want to know when you are going to table this legislation. And in 2017, you said autumn 2018 was the common sense time for another referendum. In autumn 18, you said you'd set out your plans for an independence referendum in the not too distant future. In autumn 2019, you said the referendum must happen next year. In autumn 2020, you said you wouldn't rule out a vote in 2021. And in 2021, you said you'd start pushing for a referendum in spring 2022. When is going to be the right time?
Look, I make no apology for the fact that over the past 2 years as First Minister, I have prioritised steering the country through a pandemic.
And that's where you're a fucking liar. Well, like, you know, another year comes to pass, and it means we're going to get another year, another onslaught for the year of Nicola Thin Lips talking about independence to no end. To no avail, of course, because this is the, sixth time now we've heard this bullshit since 2017. It's the same crap every time, as people are probably aware. They promise independence, they promise a referendum, get elected, sort of on that promise. You could argue, give or take, that there's other reasons for why people vote for them. No credible opposition being one of them, or maybe they're concerned about poverty, climate change, you name it, fuck knows. But the point remains the same. They have always maintained a relatively high amount of the voter base in Scotland ever since the referendum in 2014 never went the way that theoretically I believe it should have gone. I believe that referendum was rigged, and the way that the SNP support surged after that referendum kind of suggested to me that it's pretty obvious that there's some foul play somewhere. Nonetheless, point remains the same, that the SNP have managed to maintain a massive semblance of popularity, voter support ever since then. But with that has come constant false fucking promises from this boot. Not that I ever bought into their shit anyway. I voted in 2014 for independence. As I've talked about before, I'm not going to waste everybody's time repeating things that I've said years ago on this channel in regards to independence. Mind you, I technically could get away with doing that, considering this book repeats the same shit all the time. As I have said more than one occasion, or pointed out on more than one occasion, I should say. But I'm not going to do that nonetheless. But what I will say is that, yes, I did vote for independence in 2014, but it was nothing to do with support for the SNP. I didn't really know who the hell they were. I was pretty politically ignorant at the time. I was only able to vote because they lowered the voting age, so it's safe to say that I didn't really know much about politics back then. So I was never really in the SNP's camp. But I've watched their bullshit since Brexit. Then I found videos of this bit before Brexit, years before Brexit, and the months leading up to or the referendum, I should say, in 2016, where she's trying everything in her fucking power to ensure that the referendum, the way that it was voted on, every country in the UK had to vote the same way or it wouldn't be allowed to go through. Bullshit like this. She was trying everything in her power to try and scupper the vote to make sure that it went in favour of Remain. Or that's how it looked anyway. That's how it was presented to me and how I observed it to be. She was going all around Europe, gallivanting around the place, standing at podiums, fucking bootlicking. You know, the usual pish. I've got several clips of her somewhere on my channel, in the deep, dark depths of my channel, where she's talking about the fact that Scotland, this was after the EU referendum, Scotland would be able to rejoin Europe, but, you know, we acknowledge that we'd have to lose some sovereignty in the process. You know, for the greater good, essentially. You know, We know that we would have to lose some sovereignty, pull sovereignty here and there. Yes, what? What's the point of independence if you've got no sovereignty? It's independence in name only, but anyway, I'm digressing to a certain extent now. The point is that in the run-up to the EU referendum, all this boot was doing was trying everything in her power to ensure that it never went the way of leaving the EU. After the vote went the way that it did, she proceeded, along with many others, but she especially immediately started this soft Brexit, hard Brexit bullshit, did everything in her power for years to try and ensure that the vote never went through. She tried to stop Brexit, their fucking campaign slogan in 2017 or 2018, that daft bus, stop Brexit. Anti-democratic and the thin-lipped baboon, coffee breath boot, sits there in her shitey fucking jacket, doing an interview, crying about fucking democracy and the need for it to be respected. Where have we heard these tropes before? Oh, that's right. Every year that I've made videos on this exact topic where this boot starts her independence tirade, because she says the same shit all the time. Short memory underneath that bowl cut, eh? You know? And I've still got the video as well that seems to be something that nobody ever talks about anymore. The fact of the matter is that she obtained record levels of votes in the 2015 and 2016 elections, the two elections that came after the 2014 Scottish independence referendum. Two landslide election victories. UK one as well as Scottish Parliament one. Landslide victories, they were quoted as saying. So what did Thin Lips do in the rant to the EU referendum? You know, she writes her little article on the SNP's website, as well as simultaneously releasing a video on Facebook and the SNP's YouTube channel, and their website, I should say. It's on the YouTube channel now, but it's unlisted, where she tells independent supporters why independent supporters should vote Remain this Thursday, where she explicitly goes on to say that if Scotland votes to leave the EU, then the premise for independence doesn't arise. And you're not fucking telling me that a good portion, maybe not all, but a good portion of her voter base that just want independence, don't really give a shit about the EU either way. You're not telling me that they wouldn't have listened to that or read an article and decided to vote accordingly. Oh no, we better vote to remain then, because if we vote to leave, then we won't get our independence. So then what happens? Scotland votes overall, supposedly, in theory, to votes remain. And ever since then, this boot and her fucking party have done nothing. They have done nothing but whine, moan and revise history and go on about the fact that Scotland's been dragged against as well. I'd love to find out just how many people voted accordingly because of what this fucking boot said. She's a devious, manipulative, and I know she's a puppet, I get it. But nonetheless, the way she's able to string along the average Joe, it begs belief as far as I'm concerned. And years later, with her hair getting fucking worse, her lip disappearing into itself, she still repeats the same garbage with a straight face. Well, I say a straight face. She can't help but crack a wee smile now and again. Is that Duper's delight? Thin Lips say? You know, but anyway, I paused this for a reason. The reason being, of course, she's a fucking liar. She tries to imply there that the only reason that, you know, when they were voted in what was it, 2020? Or was it 2019? The 2019 election? The snap election? After, you know, they all tried to fucking ensure that Brexit couldn't go through, the hung parliament shit and all the rest of it, if memory serves me correctly. But, she got in again, of course. The SNP went, oh, independence, we'll get it this time, I promise you. Boris Johnson better respect it if he doesn't use a democracy tomorrow. Well, we all heard that shit. But, of course, you fast forward to what, January 2020, not long after the election, and wouldn't you know, it was January of 2020, the 31st of January, Nicola Thin Lips urged yes supporters to be patient on a second independence referendum. Right? Short memory, boys, if you believe her bullshits. Nicola Thin Lips has admitted there may not be a second independence referendum this year, as she urged her supporters to remain patient and stay the course. Yet she fucking predicated her entire election campaign in the months prior to this on independence. Doing the same shit that she's doing now. Oh, we're planning to put it through the parliament and process it. You know, oh, we got elected, we made a promise. Aye. You know, when's the penny going to drop for people? I don't know. Anyhow, it says here, despite previously giving the impression she had a plan to overcome UK government resistance, Thin Lips said there were no shortcuts or clever wheezes. AKA, they told you, which they were telling her all the way up until election day, that she wasn't getting a referendum. Rightly or wrongly, that's here nor there. The point remains the same though. She was told explicitly she wasn't going to get a referendum. Gets voted in anyway because she insinuated that she had a means to, you know, get past the blockade that was put in place to prevent this referendum. Gets in, then immediately comes out, oh, by the way, I know it happened. You know? You know, it's fucking brilliant. It's brilliant. And you know the worst part about it? All these videos that I was making back then, 31st of January 2020, there was me. And I fucking predicted this. I predicted it. In a video from 2019. This clip there that you can see my arms on the screen, I was talking, obviously, and I fucking explicitly predicted exactly what they went on to do. Go figure. How a guy on the internet is able to predict what the S&P are planning, but yet their gullible followers can't see through them. After all these years of repeated promises. Bollocks. Fucking bollocks. Now, I can't find an article that I recall from about April time of the same year, a couple of months after that article that I just read out, where she comes out and she goes, oh, by the way, because of COVID, we're postponing the referendum. It's like, wait a minute, all the bullshit that you were talking about in January, where you weren't sure there was going to be a referendum. People, I remember Wings of Scotland or Wings Over Scotland wrote on their blog, there was other people on the internet and Twitter and whatnot doing the same, calling them traitors and liars. I remember it well. Yeah? But yet the short memory seems to be very persistent in Scotland, because just a short few months later, she waddles on out to her fucking podium to talk about the fact that COVID has meant we have to put the referendum on the back burner. You know, completely disregarding the fact she wasn't going to get one anyway. Then she comes out a year later, 2021, to talk about the fact that if it wasn't for the coup, there would have been a referendum the year prior. I mean, just pull the other one. Who the fuck are you fooling? Quite clearly enough people fall for this nonsense. I have observed their bullshit for so many years now. That's why I can't stand them. I fucking detest them all. I don't care if they're puppets or not. Each and every fucking one of these sacks of shit that are in that party, I just can't fucking stand. Especially Thin Lips, because she fucking stands there and she manages to convince people with blatant falsehoods. It's just fucking ridiculous. Oh, look at me. She said questions of her commitment to a separate Scotland were daft, and Indy F2 should be held no later than the end of 2023, right? So this is the next deadline, right? And it's truth depending, of course. And on top of that, where have we heard the rhetoric before as well about them putting some bill through the Parliament? We heard all this bullshit a few years ago. 2019, I believe, maybe 29, would have been 2019. Heard all this shit before. But even if they do put it through Parliament, so fucking what? It's entirely up to Westminster whether or not they grant you a referendum. Rightly or wrongly, as I said, but it's entirely up to them. So all this bullshit, every single election cycle, it's just pathetic. And the worst part about it is, she doesn't give a fuck about Scottish independence. I don't personally believe that the SNP, her in particular, actually have any intention of obtaining independence or want independence. But I do believe that if there is actually a decision behind the scenes to push for independence and for the powers that be to allow it to occur, then that boot and everybody else like her that's in that party don't give a fuck really about independence. Some may, give or take. Vast majority, of course, though, are only really using it as a leapfrog to obtain EU access again. So they've hijacked the independence movement of old, the historic desire for Scotland to leave the Union and obtain its sovereignty and become a nation in its own right. They hijacked that movement as a last-ditch effort to fucking bootlick and pander and grovel to the European Union. And that's exactly what would occur in the event of us getting back into the EU. You know, the S&P have already said, Ian Blackford has said it, if I'm not mistaken, Alan Smith has said it, Thin Lips has said it on God knows how many occasions, that ballbag Angus Robertson has said it, and that's just the ones that I can remember off the top of my head. Fiona Hislop has also made comments similar in nature. They've all made reference to the fact that we want to be part of the European Union. When they say we, they mean the S&P. We want to be part of the European Union because they share a vision of the world that we share, a sustainable one. You know, one it's all about a green recovery in terms of COVID, and it's all about equity and all that good social justice progressive bullshit. So we're going to join a union that's really just turning into a left-wing hellscape, far left hellscape, which suits the S&P down to a T. They're not going to disobey orders. They're not going to join the European Union and go about their business and do what the fuck they want. They're going to phone the European Union's headquarters up every single day and ask what needs done next, essentially. Oh, we're taking some more migrants for you. Fuck's sake. Just a joke. And as for democracy, another thing as well, as I said earlier on, this is the same party that did everything in their power to stop Brexit. But this is also the same boot who... Nicola Thinlips does not intend to hold a referendum on EU membership if Scotland becomes independent. She said she does not plan to hold a referendum on EU membership if Scotland becomes independent. It would be assumed that Scots want an independent Scotland to join the EU, effectively making Indy Rev 2 a double referendum, with a vote for independence taken as a vote in favour of EU membership as well. That's fucking democracy, folks. That's democracy. Oh yeah, the same lesbian who sits and cries and whines and moans and complains and greets and throws her little toys out the pram and claims that Boris Johnson is disrespecting Scotland and casting Scotland aside, rejecting our wishes and our desires, and above all else, completely and utterly shitting all over the concept of democracy, while simultaneously behind the scenes, this is what she's fucking implementing and putting in place. All the while, of course, while this is all occurring, while I'm recording this video, guess what the SNP are also doing? I'm sure you're aware, but I'll just tell you anyway, because this is all about fucking democracy, folks. The SNP are currently implementing plans, or moving Scotland in a direction, I should say, which will see us emulate every single policy that the European Union decide to implement in the future. Every policy, every law, every piece of legislation, Scotland will do its best to implement. We're not even in the EU, in theory. And this is the shower of shit that we have in charge doing thy bidding for the EU. So, what do you think would be any different in the event of us leaving the UK to rejoin that fucking hellscape? Nothing at all! Nothing at all!
Clearly said we were putting plans for an independence referendum on hold. If only Boris Johnson had done likewise with plans around Brexit, we wouldn't be seeing some of the chaos.
Oh, the same Brexit that didn't get implemented for, what, 3 odd years? Because of people like you, who were hell bent on ensuring that it didn't occur? You thin-lipped fuck.
Associated with Brexit right now, but I am determined. I've won an election on this basis to give people in Scotland the choice over our future, and I believe when that...
This is the thing, this is what's pissing me off about this. I can't believe I've almost done 20 minutes just ranting about this shit. I said I wouldn't repeat myself, I probably have to a certain degree, but it's the fact she's won every election promising the same bullshit, and yet people still cannot seem to fathom or even entertain the possibility that maybe they're fucking lying to you. Maybe they don't really give a shit about independence. The only thing that they really care about is having as much control as possible, as you're seeing quite clearly with all this COVID shit. Huh? Independence, oh yeah. Fuck off.
Choice comes, people will choose an independent future. The preparatory work for that is underway and will determine the precise date for introducing that legislation in due course. We are hopefully, as you said earlier on, on the downward slope of this wave of Omicron, which clears the way for us to do that. The key thing is that we will take these steps in a time scale that will facilitate that referendum before the end of 2023, which is the commitment I made at the election and was elected on.
Oh, it's so funny, I'm laughing.
Overwhelmingly.
Given that Boris Johnson's approval ratings are at rock bottom right now, and support for...
You know, some people may see that as duping delight, others may see that as a nervous laugh, whatever you will. I personally see that as her laughing in the faces of other stupid individuals who believe that fucking shit.
Scottish independence is still only around 50%. If that doesn't drive support for independence, what will?
Look, Sophie, I'm laughing not at the question. I'm just laughing at reflecting the fact that if you told me when I was a much younger politician that one day 50% support for independence would be seen as some kind of failure, I would have grabbed that with both hands. Look.
And you expect me to believe... I love this shit as well here. You know, she always does this sort of crap. You see photos of her all the time in Parliament waddling about with her bowl cut and her coffee breath with her saltire face masks, right? And you see this shit all the time if she's doing her COVID speeches from home or whatever it may be. There's always a Scotland flag in the background, or she's got a little Scotland saltire statue or ornament there placed perfectly for the camera to see. It gives off this little illusion that she's all about Scotland. Is she fuck? She'd have a European Union flag sat there if she could. Don't you kid yourself. internationalism, interdependence, the terms of the 21st century, which essentially, you can wave goodbye to Scotland and the concept of nationality, borders and whatnot, identity even, because it all goes out the window in this little pipe dream that all these globalists have. Yeah, but it's fine. It's fine. What do you expect me to believe? All those years ago she was an avid independence supporter, and what would her idea of independence have been back then? Fuck. Back knows. Yeah.
Support for independence, I believe, is rising. I think when Scotland...
I believe it's rising. Of course you believe it's rising. You know, it probably has risen to a certain extent for a multitude of reasons, actually, now I think about it. Some things I've said before, other things are just self-explanatory. You know, when you've got revisionist history on a daily basis, and I mean literal revisionist history from these people. I've gone over it in videos in the past. As I said, I'm not going to repeat too much more. I don't want a video getting too long. But they're lying. They revise history. They've even got their own little clown activists doing the exact same thing now. And they never really get pulled up for any of their bullshit. And of course, you've got the fact that now there's a swathe of EU supporters as well that are now automatically lumped in with yes supporters, some of which will want to go back into the EU. I'm not saying that they don't. But there's others that just want independence. But they're all now part of the same fucking group. So that sort of indirectly conflates, dilutes the overall movement. But that's more skin of her nose. And then, of course, you've got the fact that every single opposition party, whether it's down south or here, is just an embarrassment. And it's almost, there's some days I genuinely think to myself, is this all happening to make it appear as if the only viable option for any Scot is to vote SNP because the plan behind the scenes is to start the breakup of the union? I don't know. Fundamentally or wholeheartedly, I don't believe that to be the case, because I have watched their bullshit for years, and time after time after time, I am proven to be correct. And this isn't me gloating, I'm just saying, they're taking people for a fucking ride. And every time they get in, promising independence, what do when they don't get it? They start implementing all the UN demands. And that's what we've been witnessing, what I've been witnessing for years. It's just a fucking disgrace, eh? It's a fucking disgrace. These people are shitting in your history, they're shitting in your culture, they're eradicating your identity. They fundamentally want to completely change society, they want to change your children, they want to change your behaviour, your mindset, control your life. But it's fine because they hijacked an independence movement. And you think that once we obtain independence, we can get rid of the SNP and we can all live happily ever after inside the European Union. Okay. Yeah, that makes so much sense. It's okay, whatever.
When it comes to choose, we will choose independence, not just because of the current...
Even this is the sort of shit that used to piss me off all those years ago when I used to listen to this bullshit on a regular, is the fact that she just says independence so matter-of-factly. Because obviously over time she's managed to make independence and rejoining the European Union synonymous, but fundamentally they're not synonymous, they're two separate issues. Completely separate issues. So what she should be saying every time she opens that thin-lipped trap to utter the word independence is EU membership. When we get EU membership, when we obtain our EU membership, when we vote for our EU membership, or blah, 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 blah. But nah, she never does that. It's always independence. And I sometimes wonder, are people that fucking dumb that they're falling for this? Is that all it takes to pacify you? Fuck's sake.
An occupant in number 10, but what that...
Oh yeah, let's vote for independence because of Boris Johnson.
That is illustrating very powerfully is the fact that Scotland too often ends up with things imposed upon us, Brexit for example, or being governed by people and by parties that we don't choose, and all of that is the price of not being...
Well, it's hilarious, but she says earlier on in this little interview here, she brags about the fact, oh, I'm only in charge of Scotland when it comes to COVID. You know, it's been you and your advisors behind the scenes for the last 2 years. We've seen what you're capable of. Not a fucking lot, as it goes. But I'll have that again, you know, just to finish this off, because I'm a bit Brexit. Oh, you know, if you get against that will, you know, what I mentioned at the start of the fucking video, when she totally manipulated her voter base to vote a specific way because she told them if they didn't vote that way and they instead voted the opposite way, they'd never see independence. the very core base of her fucking voter bloc want independence. So naturally they're going to vote the way that she told them to. I'll play the video and then I'll end this.
Reporters frequently ask me two questions about the EU referendum. The first is, how can you support independence and back Scotland's membership of the EU? Well, the answer to that is simple. I believe that independent countries must cooperate to tackle common challenges. Every member of the EU is an independent country working with others for the greater good.
For the greater good, you know? Fuck trade, you know, this is about the greater good. What the fuck, man? But that's not the bit. But, you know, you got to bear in mind as well here that had every country or the vote just in favour gone in general in favour of Remain that fateful Thursday, do you think she would have been crying about an independence referendum? Nah. The only reason we've ever heard any utterance of a referendum after the 2016 EU referendum is because these people see that as the last ditch opportunity to potentially rejoin Europe. That's all this has been about. Want the proof? Well, the fact of the matter is they had a fucking mandate in 2016. This video here is part of the reason you could make the argument that they obtained said mandate. Because the mandate specifically said if Scotland voted to leave the EU and was dragged out against its will, then they would have the right to hold another referendum. That was their mandate, crystal clear. But the fact of the matter is, they then in turn did everything in their power to ensure that Scotland didn't leave the EU. They in turn thwarted, scuppered, stalled Brexit for years to the point where they ran out of time to act upon their own mandates. All they had to do was allow the UK to leave the EU or begin trade negotiations or whatever it may have been. But no, couldn't have that. And you have to wonder to yourself why. Makes you wonder. Is it because they ain't so fucking confident that people really see the concept of independence as an EU gateway? I don't know. Maybe they didn't want to risk it, so they had to ensure that the UK remained in the EU. So in the event of the referendum failing, it's fine because we'll still be in the EU anyway. You thin-lip fuck.
The second question is whether a Brexit vote will mean a second independence referendum. Well, here's what the SNP manifesto at the recent election said about that. The Scottish Parliament should have the right to hold another referendum if there is a significant and material change in the circumstances that prevailed in 2014, such as Scotland being taken out of the European Union against our will.
And before she says any more, just read between the lines there. So that's essentially saying, so if Scotland overall votes to leave the EU, then this concept of independence that we've got written in our manifesto in terms of a mandate can never come to fruition. So you know what to do, folks.
Now, I'm clear that if Scotland does indeed face that prospect of being taken out of Europe against our will, then that option is on the table.
See?
But to be clear, that situation only arises if Scotland votes Remain next week.
So whatever you do, make sure you vote Remain. Because if we vote to Remain, there's always that possibility that we will be taking our Europe against our will and obtain that referendum. No, this was a fucking means of security. That's what this was about. Ensuring that as many people in Scotland voted to Remain to ensure that the Remain vote got up a few in the percentage points, I should say. You know? And you had the get out of jail free card with your mandate for a referendum in the event of the referendum result not going the way that it inevitably did go. Manipulation clear as day, deception clear as day, but it's fine, they're progressive and you'll fall for it every time.